part-time gig as a DoorDash driver during weekends to supplement my income. Juggling a day job, I could only hit the road during the late-night hours. On my first shift, I started around 9 in the evening. After receiving my initial order, I picked it up from the restaurant and circled around for about 10 minutes without any new requests. Despite the late hour, weekends typically brought in a decent flow of orders. Finally, a new order popped up, albeit a small one with a modest tip. I accepted it and then found myself waiting in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes until the next order came in. Waiting that long between orders with no ability to choose and potentially lengthen the wait wasn't the most ideal situation. The subsequent order was another small one, but I figured some earnings were better than none, so I took it. Upon picking up the Taco Bell bag, I meticulously counted the items to ensure accuracy: 2 tacos and a handful of hot sauce packets. Surprisingly, the delivery fee seemed to outweigh the cost of the food. Confirming the pickup, I received directions to the customer's house, which was a mere 10 minutes away in a typical neighborhood. As I drove, I hit a red light in an almost deserted intersection with minimal traffic around. It was during this moment, waiting for the light to turn green, that a truck pulled up beside me. I instinctively scanned my surroundings, and the man in the truck drew my attention to the point where I turned my head completely. He had his head out of the window, peering down into my car, not at me, but at the DoorDash bag on my passenger seat. Spotting a green light, I accelerated. Perplexed by his overt scrutiny, I couldn't fathom why he was fixated on my car, with no attempt to conceal it. Glancing in my mirrors, I noticed the truck had smoothly merged into my lane, trailing behind me for a considerable distance. Uncertain if it was tailing me or simply coincidental, the straight road ahead didn't offer clarity. I kept a watchful eye on the mirrors, anticipating the truck to pass the intersection, but it continued to follow my route. Though he might have just been a local resident, especially given the turns in the neighborhood, the man's intrusive gaze heightened my suspicions. Navigating through several neighborhood turns, the route eventually led to the last road with the specified address. As I made the turn, a dead-end sign came into view a few houses down. I decelerated and came to a stop, fixating on the rearview mirror, my senses on high alert. The truck pulled over, and the driver parked while I remained in my car, contemplating a plan. The truck behind me idled with its lights on, and then I received a message from a DoorDash customer inquiring about the delivery time. It suddenly clicked. The man in the truck was likely my client, waiting for me to exit the car. Despite realizing the situation, I found myself unable to leave the safety of my vehicle. As I panicked and brainstormed escape routes, the man exited the truck a minute later. Approaching my car, he halted at the trunk, staring at me through the rear windshield. Tension filled the air, and my mind raced. Suddenly, he struck the windshield with an object, shattering it. I hastily started the car and crouched as my husband jumped into the back seat, attempting to enter through the broken glass. He stumbled when I executed a sharp turn, and by the time he recovered, I skillfully maneuvered between his truck without causing damage. Observing him stagger across the street, I promptly dialed 911. When the police arrived, they found only shattered glass scattered on the road. I'm grateful that I escaped with just a broken windshield, but the trauma of that night lingered for months. I can only hope he isn't targeting more individuals and subjecting them to unknown dangers. I work as an Uber driver, primarily covering a large suburb outside of Las Vegas. While the city itself can get a bit hectic, this particular suburb is renowned for being a peaceful neighborhood, so I've never felt overly concerned. Encountering some strange individuals is not uncommon, but they usually turn out to be just under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or something similar. I had been working without any issues for a few months and found that I genuinely enjoyed my job. One night I followed my usual hours, driving from 6 to 10 p.m. It turned out to be one of those nights where I was consistently picking up passengers and making good money. When the clock struck 10 o'clock, instead of calling it a night, I decided to continue taking orders and maximize my earnings. The next order, which came in after 10, was from someone located 18 minutes away at an undisclosed location. This wasn't unusual. Often, it meant the customer was in an area not precisely marked on the map, like the side of a road or outside an unmapped location. Zooming in, I noticed it was near a storage garage. I started driving, and when I was just 5 minutes away, I received a call from the client. "I'm running late. I need you to wait for me for a few minutes." "Thanks," he uttered hastily, sounding out of breath as if he had just completed a strenuous run. The call ended abruptly. While it was unusual for someone to announce their lateness, I didn't mind waiting a few extra minutes. I understood that canceling the ride would mean a prolonged wait for another driver, and I hoped that my patience might be rewarded with a little extra tip. Upon arrival, I noticed no one on the street, so I drove in and parked in the garage's lot, willing to wait. After 5 minutes, I spotted a man in the rearview mirror briskly emerging from the warehouse carrying a sizable sports bag. As he approached my car, an unpleasant odor emanated from him, coupled with the sight of sweat covering him, quite repulsive. While I've picked up post-gym passengers before, it never added to a pleasant experience. Attempting to remain composed, I greeted him, but he didn't respond. I resumed driving, and throughout the trip, he kept the bag on his lap, staring ahead in silence. The discomfort lingered, prompting me to maintain silence as well. After an uneasy 20-minute drive, we finally reached the destination, a street corner with a known address. Even before I could pull into a parking lot, the man hastily exited and walked away. Despite the somewhat unpleasant experience, there was no tip, leaving me disappointed and leading me to conclude my evening's trips. The phone call concluded unexpectedly. While it was atypical for someone to call in tardily, I didn't mind waiting a few additional minutes. I recognized that canceling the ride would entail an extended wait for another driver, and I hoped that my patience might result in a modest extra tip. Upon reaching the destination, I observed an empty street, so I navigated into the garage and parked in the lot, prepared to wait. After 5 minutes, a man swiftly emerged from the warehouse, carrying a sizable duffel bag. As he neared my car, an unpleasant odor emanated from him, and his sweat-covered appearance was quite off-putting. Though I've encountered passengers post-gym previously, it's never been a pleasant experience. Striving to maintain composure, I offered a greeting, but he remained unresponsive. I continued the journey, and throughout, he kept the bag on his lap, gazing silently ahead. The discomfort persisted, leading me to maintain my silence as well. After an uneasy 20-minute drive, we finally reached our destination, a street corner with a known address. Before I could navigate into the parking lot, the man hastily exited and walked away. Despite the somewhat unpleasant encounter, no tip was left, leaving me disappointed and prompting the decision to conclude my evening commute. I work as a truck driver for a moving company based on the East Coast. Our specialization lies in cross-country moves, often transporting individuals to the far West Coast. The duration of these journeys varies, spanning anywhere from 20 to 40 hours, contingent on the specific locations involved. I served as the driver for the company, solely responsible for operating the vehicle without engaging in any boxing or loading tasks. My primary duties involved driving and delivering or picking up trailers from clients' homes. I remained with the company for nearly 4 years, during which the job essentially followed a routine. Upon reaching the designated address, I would load the trailer with the client's possessions. Typically, these trips lasted around 30 hours, including 2-3 brief rest stops. Navigating through the Midwest, especially in states like Iowa and Nebraska, proved to be the most challenging part of the journey. The vast expanses of seemingly endless fields and desolate roads in these areas made the trip monotonous and consequently exhausting. On one occasion, as I crossed the Iowa-Nebraska border, the sun had recently set, marking approximately 20 hours on the road. Although I had taken a short break a few states back, I found myself on the verge of needing another one. Fatigue and drowsiness weighed heavily on me. In this wearied state, I noticed a peculiar sight on the side of the road. A car was parked with its headlights on, positioned in my lane. Negotiating the narrow road, I cautiously slowed down to pass it. It became apparent that the car was still running, as steam billowed from the exhaust pipe. A man leaned against the driver's door, making direct eye contact as I passed by. I nodded in acknowledgement, and as I continued down the road, I observed him returning to the car. Encountering someone seated on the side of a desolate road with a running car struck me as peculiar. There didn't seem to be any apparent trouble. Rather, it gave the impression of someone patiently waiting. I kept a vigilant eye on the mirrors, but after a few minutes, the car's headlights vanished behind me. Although I was gradually waking up, my eyes still felt heavy. Continuing for another mile or so, I came across another unusual sight. A car was positioned sideways in the middle of the road, and as I approached, I noticed another vehicle on the side, a sizable van. While uncertain about the exact situation, an unsettling feeling crept over me. Attempting to brake, the car remained stubbornly in the road, forcing me to come to a complete stop. About 20 meters away, I observed several men standing along the road, with one positioned in front of the obstructive car. It didn't take me long to grasp the gravity of the situation. Left with no other recourse, I began to reverse. The men maintained their positions with an unsettling confidence. Suddenly, a light illuminated behind me as a car pulled up, blocking my retreat. Simultaneously, a man exited the car and sprinted toward the back of my trailer. Concurrently, all the men from the front started running in my direction. In that critical moment, my mind went blank as a surge of adrenaline consumed my thoughts. Reacting instinctively, I pressed on the gas pedal just as I heard a sharp pop from the back of the trailer, and the door swung open. The men positioned in front screamed, attempting to obstruct my path. However, realizing I wasn't stopping, they hastily retreated to the side of the road. I collided with the car head-on, sending it careening off the road and reducing it to wreckage. Though several shots were fired in the distance, none found their mark. Over the next 5 miles, the sound of cargo tumbling out of the trailer echoed before I could summon the police and rendezvous with an officer on the road. The aftermath was chaotic, but as events unfolded, it became apparent that this was more than a random attack and robbery. When the police arrived at the scene, they discovered the crashed car of the assailant, rendered undrivable. Utilizing it as a lead, they managed to trace down one of the attackers, who provided crucial information about the others. The perpetrators had details about affluent homeowners in the midst of a move and had planned to intercept me, intending to pilfer the contents of their van. Though they never explicitly stated their intentions post-robbery, the implications led me to believe that leaving no trace would have been a much simpler task for them.